Welcome back, fellow explorers, to Project Opono. Over the past few hundreds of millions of years, all life on Opono has been relegated to the water. From the shallow oceans to the rivers and lakes, life has conquered every part of Opono's oceans. However, there is still one environment left uncolonized. That environment is dry land. But why hasn't it been colonized yet? You see, dry land is a tough environment for organisms that don't possess the necessary adaptations to survive in. As of now, dry land is nothing but a barren wasteland of rock. Coupled with the lack of food and blaring sun, the organisms of Opono's oceans have no reason to venture out of the water. But that may soon change. Perhaps a clade of Photinostroma finds itself in the intertidal zones of the two continents of Mazi and Apovlidos. Opono's moon Paravu isn't as large or as powerful as Earth's moon. However, its gravity may still have a great effect on the cycle of the tides and the inhabitants of the intertidal zone. As the Photinostroma begins spreading along the coastal waters, overcrowding may eventually occur. This may result in some Photinostroma populations growing on the rocks below. Eventually, these algae-like plants may begin to grow further and further inland, becoming something similar to earth moss. Over time, their physical appearance may start to change. They may evolve millions of tiny hair-like leaves, giving them a fuzzy texture. At the same time, their cuticles may thicken slightly to retain the water they gather during high tide, allowing them to leave the water behind for good and take up a life exclusively on dry land. As these moss-like plants become more and more adapted to terrestrial life, they may eventually evolve simple roots. These roots will break down the rocks into soil, allowing larger plants to start taking root. We will call these moss-like plants the Chytrovria. They will reproduce asexually on the barren land, carpeting the continents of Mazi and Apovlidos in a layer of thick yellow fuzz. The newly formed soil may allow larger plants to begin colonizing the now less barren lands of the two continents. On the supercontinent of Mazi, descendants of the Condylophilo may be in a prime position to become full-time land dwellers. As the Condylophilo begin carpeting the rivers and lakes, overcrowding is bound to be an issue. As a result, some Condylophilo may begin spreading along the riverbank, burrowing their roots into the mud. This may prove to be an effective strategy to avoid being suffocated by other plants, so these Condylophilo may adapt completely for growing out of the water. However, these plants may need to solve some problems before they can colonize the land. Their leaves will constantly be exposed to the blaring sun, risking them drying out. So, these Condylophilo may evolve toughened cuticles around their leaves with tiny pores or stomata covering the leaves to allow them to continue taking in CO2 and releasing oxygen. Another problem these plants will face is their height. These plants, being very short, may need to grow taller to collect some light. So perhaps they evolve to elongate their central bulb into a trunk. To stay upright, these terrestrial Condylophilo may evolve a tough, woody outer layer around their trunks to stay supported out of the water. This may also keep water trapped in the trunk, keeping the plant moist. The last issue these plants need to solve is reproduction. In the ancestral Condylophilo, the seeds of the plant were contained in fruits at the ends of their roots. In these new terrestrial forms, when the plants are ready to reproduce, they may grow a small flower which emerges from the ground. This flower will be the female gametangia. After the flowers are grown, the plant will then release their male gametes into the air. Once a male gamete lands on a female flower, the flower will die and a fruit will start to grow below the soil. Once the fruits are mature, they may poke out of the ground, emitting a sweet scent to attract animals to feed on them, spreading the plant seeds in their excrement. We will call these strange trees the Xenodendro. Species range from 1.5 to 2 meters tall. As the Chytrovira and Xenodendro begin spreading across the continent, it is inevitable that animals will evolve to feed on them. Some animals in the intertidal zone may occasionally crawl out of the water to feed on the Chytrovira and the Xenodendro fruits. One such animal may be the Phorisosa. After the Phorisosa evolved, they quickly spread out of the reefs, spreading to almost every environment on the planet. Perhaps one clade of Phoresosa may find themselves in the intertidal zone. Here they would feed on the coastal Chytrivira and other plants. Due to the lack of any other land animals at this time, these Phoresosa may be able to quickly spread across the intertidal zone, feeding on any plants and fruits that they can find. However, once the tide recedes and the pools of water these creatures find themselves in dry up, the Phoresosa will be completely exposed to the air and blaring sun. When this happens, they may begin to dry out. However, these creatures possess a thick layer of skin similar to an exoskeleton. This may help them retain water, and so it may evolve to completely envelope these creatures' bodies. Along with this, it may evolve a layer of chitin for added defense. However, there are many other issues these animals may face. The snail-like foot of these creatures may not be an effective enough way to locomote on land. So they may evolve it into many pairs of legs, giving them a body plan similar to the centipedes of Earth. This change in locomotion is quite drastic, so it may slow their transition onto land. However, their legs may not be covered by the exoskeleton. Instead, they may evolve thick leathery skin to retain water. The challenge of support due to the planet's gravity may be easy to counteract. Their main bodies may be supported by their exoskeleton, while the rest of the body is supported by a hydrostatic skeleton. This means they push and pull blood out of the limbs to allow them to walk around on land, similarly to Earth insects. The next problem these creatures face is breathing. The ancestral Phoresosa breathed using holes in between the segments of their exoskeleton. In these land-dwelling forms, these holes may lead to 3 pairs of lungs. These lungs may have a fractal-like internal structure to allow for greater oxygen exchange. These lungs may be helped in breathing by a large muscle positioned between each pair of lungs. These muscles may be similar to the diaphragm of Earth mammals. This gives these creatures a very strange but effective form of active respiration. As they breathe, the diaphragm contracts the lungs, helped by the lungs being pushed against the exoskeleton. At the openings of these lungs may be sent organs, allowing the terrestrial Phoresosa to smell the air to locate food, such as Xenodentra fruits, among other things. The last issue these creatures have to face is reproduction. Their eggs, similar to those of Earth amphibians and fish, have to be laid in water to not dry out. So these creatures may lay their eggs in the dirt to keep them moist, until they hatch and restart the cycle anew. We will call these strange Phoresosa the Tetradacopodia. Sizes range from 1 inch to over a foot long, and they live for up to 7 years. Another animal that may take up residence on dry land is the Phytotacarida. These animals may have a quicker transition onto land for a few major reasons. One reason is that they are already semi-aquatic, feeding on the Ridicon of the riverbank. Another reason is that they possess a skeleton. This skeleton first evolved as a way to support their weight in the water. However, it may allow these creatures to walk on land. As they specialize for life on land, their physical appearance may change. Their head may part from the main body, as their current position has their front pair of legs connected to the skull, which isn't that great for a terrestrial animal. As this happens, their legs may be positioned further and further down the body, eventually evolving an erect posture to bear their weight. However, there are still issues these animals need to solve, one of which being water retention. These creatures, descending from semi-aquatic animals, may already have thick leathery skin. However, as they move further inland, this may not be enough to bear the heat, leading to dehydration. So these creatures may evolve a new type of skin. They may evolve scales. These interlocking scales may protect the animal and also have the added benefit of retaining even greater amounts of water. The remaining issues these terrestrial Phytotacarida have are breathing and reproduction. The Lungacauda from which these creatures descend had gills under their first 2 pairs of fins. These gills may be internalized, forming into 2 pairs of lungs. However, these lungs will be very different from ours. These creatures' lungs may have 2 openings and 1 exit. The intake pipes may be positioned at the top of the body to allow them to easily take in oxygen. The outtake pipe may be positioned on the sides, allowing them to exhale the air and not breathe it back in. To aid them in taking in air, they may evolve a pair of breathing muscles for each lung. These muscles may operate separately from one another. This may mean that as these creatures exhale, they may draw in new air, allowing them to have two batches of air in the lungs at the same time. To be able to smell, they may evolve scent organs at the openings of their lungs, forming their sense of smell. In the case of reproduction, they may evolve a remarkable form of keeping their embryos from drying out. These creatures may evolve to house their embryos in a thick leathery egg sac. This egg sac may be filled with water and many yolks to feed the developing young. The gonopods of these creatures may strengthen, allowing them to carry their egg sac around as they feed, protecting them from threats and the elements. When the young are about to hatch, the mother will lay the egg sac down in a simple nest made of mud and rock. After hatching, the mother will bring her young food until they are developed enough to feed on their own, after which the mother will abandon them to fend for themselves. We will call these animals the Onoperitillus. They grow up to 2.5 meters long and live for up to 15 years. These creatures decrease in size and lifespan is due to the drastic changes they have undergone while transitioning onto land. And now we will travel over to Ep6 to continue to expand the terrestrial ecosystems. The Chytrivira of Ep6 may create new soil similar to the soil of Mazi. This soil may allow new plants to grow on the land of Ep6. These plants may come from relatives of the Kawakusa who still have an above-ground stem. These plants may face challenges similar to the Xenodendro of Mazi. As a result, they may convergently evolve some of the same adaptations as the Xenodendro. The stem of these plants may evolve a thick woody outer layer to retain water and support the plant. Their roots may burrow into the soil, allowing the plant to take in nutrients and anchor it to the substrate. And their leaves may evolve toughened cuticles and stomata to allow for water retention and gas exchange. However, due to the smaller stature of the Kawakusa compared to the Condylophilo, these new terrestrial forms may only be around half the height of the Xenodendro. In the case of reproduction, these plants may evolve to grow two branches once they reach maturity. The male branch will be more rounded and bulbous, allowing the gametes to be expelled in a puff of pollen. The female branch may be cup-shaped to allow them to collect as much of the male pollen as they can before forming seeds. These seeds are then released into the wind to hopefully carry them to new places for them to grow and mature into an adult. We will call these short trees the parvucormo. Species range from 0.75 to 1.25 meters tall. One animal that may be found swimming along the coasts of Ep6 are the parvipsari. These adaptable creatures may be attracted to the shores by the numerous dead bodies that are scattered across it. As they specialize to feed on these bodies, their fins may evolve into 6 bulky, muscular legs. These legs may be supported by a simple hydrostatic skeleton similar to that of the tetradecapods. As the parvipsari spend more and more time on land, they may begin to breathe air. They may do this by internalizing the gills under their first set of 2 fins into 2 lungs. These lungs will have one opening and one exit. This means they inhale through one hole and exhale through the other. These lungs may be aided by large, diaphragm-like muscles contracting and expanding the lungs to help these creatures breathe. They may evolve specialized scent organs near their intake pipes to allow them to sniff out their food from a distance. To not dry out on land, they may evolve a thick leathery skin. This skin will be similar to that of a cow, allowing the parvipsari to retain water as they transition to a fully terrestrial lifestyle. The last issue these creatures face is reproduction. Their eggs must still be laid in water to prevent them from drying out. However, unlike the tetradecapods, who simply bury their eggs in the soil to keep them moist, these parvipsari may protect their eggs by evolving a soft leathery outer casing around them. This will keep them from drying out in the blaring sun, but will allow them to be flexible enough to not be damaged if they were to get hit by anything. This will allow the parvipsari to take up a life completely independent of the water. But why would they do this? You see, the oceans of Opono are teeming with life. Everywhere you look there is life in all shapes and sizes. This may present large amounts of competition for the parvapsari, and so may incentivize some groups to take up a fully land-dwelling existence. We will call these creatures the Saispadas. Sizes range from 2 inches to just over a foot long. They can live for up to 7.5 years. As the Saispadas begin to diversify on land, predators are bound to follow. Perhaps a clade related to the Loligatesta evolves to feed on the Saispadas and anything else they can get their tentacles on. To stave off dehydration, these creatures may evolve a thick layer of skin similar to the skin of earth reptiles. As these Loligatesta begin to crawl out of the water to feed, their tentacles may be their primary way of getting from place to place. Over time, the Loligatesta with the strongest tentacles may have better locomotive efficiency and so will be more successful in colonizing the land. Over time, their tentacles may strengthen into legs, giving these animals a bipedal stance. This may mean that their trunks may be the only way they can grab food such as the Saispadas. However, these creatures have no skeleton, so how do they support themselves on land? Over time, their shells will segment, allowing for greater flexibility and speed. As this happens, the sides of the shell may grow lower and lower down the legs. This may help support the legs, and so may be the key to keeping these creatures upright. The shell on their legs may segment, allowing for more leg flexibility and greater walking efficiency. As a result of their new support mechanism, they may have something similar to the spines of Earth vertebrates. However, as these vertebrae are on the outside of the creature, they may not be called vertebrates. Instead, we will dub these creatures exovertebrates. The final issues these creatures may need to solve are breathing and reproduction. As for breathing, the ancestral panoplicema from which the Loligatesta descend breathed using a set of holes under the top portion of their shell, just below the tentacles. In these land dwellers, these holes may lead to one giant, segmented lung. This lung may be covered with ridges and bumps to maximize surface area. In between the segments may be to diaphragm-like muscles used to squeeze air out of the lungs through one central tube and pull air in through to intake tubes as the lung expands again. Near the openings of the breathing tubes, to scent organs may evolve, forming the sense of smell for these creatures. The final issue they face is reproduction. To not dry out on land, the eggs of these creatures may be lined with a thick calcium shell similar to the eggs of earth birds. Inside this shell is water and a large yolk. The water keeps the embryos moist, and the large yolk provides the developing young with nutrients until they are ready to hatch. However, in the ancestral Dakiosoma, the reproductive organs were connected directly to the stomach as they had a blind gut. In the Loligatesta, this may mean they have to expel their eggs through their trunks to be able to lay them. In the land dwellers, this may be detrimental, as if the egg were too large, it may rip the mother Loligatesta's trunk, decreasing her feeding ability. So perhaps the digestive system of these creatures evolves a partition of the throat where waste can be excreted and the eggs can be laid from. This may mean the digestive and reproductive organs of these animals may be under their tentacles. To reproduce, the Loligatesta may raise up their partner's trunk with their own and exchange gametes with a kiss. The father will have a simpler reproductive system, only being a small tract connected to the throat. The mother, however, may have a large cavity behind her reproductive tract in which the eggs can develop before they are laid. After mating, the mother will lay 3 to 5 eggs in a nest made from Chytrovria. After hatching, the young will immediately begin feeding on their nest before leaving to embark on their own journey. We will call these strange bipedal animals the Panoplopodia. They grow up to 2 meters tall and live for up to 17 years. As the plants and animals begin to colonize the land, their dead bodies may start to pile up. This may be an excellent source of nutrients for a relative of the Typhloskeleiki who already feed off of the dead bodies of larger animals. So the buildup of dead bodies on land may push a clade of Typhloskeleiki onto land. As they rise from the depths, their morphology may change drastically. Their bodies may get smaller and thinner to deal with the decompression. Over time, as they become more and more adapted for life in brighter waters, they may re-evolve their eyes. However, these eyes will be tiny, only allowing them to see blurry silhouettes of food and mates. As they spend more and more time on land, their skin may thicken to retain water. However, there is another way to keep from drying out on land. On Earth, earthworms have evolved to burrow into the soil to stave off dehydration and avoid predation. So perhaps these terrestrial Typhloskeleiki evolved to burrow into the newly formed soil, keeping their bodies wet and out of the blaring sun. As they evolve a burrowing lifestyle, their body shape may become more suited for digging. The ends of these creatures' bodies may become pointed to allow them to cut through the soil. This is called fossoriality, where an animal's body evolves to be suited for digging. Fossorial animals will usually have a fusiform or pointed oval-shaped body, along with reduced structures such as arms, legs, and tails. These Typhloskeleiki may retain their tentacles. However, they may shrink as they lose their role in digging. Instead, their tentacles may gradually evolve into structures used to help them smell and taste, using their ancestral mechanoreceptors to probe at food. These animals, being small enough, may breathe through their skin similarly to earthworms. This means they will have to exit the ground for a short period of time to be able to take in oxygen. If they don't exit the ground every once in a while, they may suffocate and die. We will call these creatures the Terrevermis. They grow up to 6 inches long and live for up to 2.5 years. They will inhabit both Mozzie and Apovlidos, similarly to the Chytravria.
And thus begins a new era of life on planet Opono. From humble beginnings as small, fish-like creatures, weird anemone-like creatures, and yellow algae-like plants, life has diversified and conquered the harsh environment that is dry land. As we look at the early land ecosystems of the continents, we can't help but marvel at their resilient and adaptive nature. The Chytravria, Zanodendro, Tetradicopodia, Onoperatilis, Parvucormo, Sispotters, Panoplopodia, and Terrevermis. These creatures have shaped the direction of the future land ecosystems. Their adaptations and evolutionary strategies have set the stage for a more diverse biosphere to come. In the next episode, we will see how these 8 pioneering clades diversify into the countless vacant niches and fill the ecosystem with new life never before seen on the planet.
Special thanks to the fan artists on Discord who contributed fan art for this episode. You all have made this episode look a lot better, and your contributions to the project have been invaluable. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share your suggestions for future episodes. See you in the next episode.